Welcome to Not Quite Nerdy, where we do the nerdy stuff so you don't have to. Today's episode is the review of Gotham Knights on PC and the Steam Deck. Enjoy. Let's get into it. Now let's talk about the most important thing, gameplay. Gotham Knights is a story of underground societies, villains, heroes, and a team of sidekicks all coming together after the death of their leader and brother-in-arms, Batman. It's a multiplayer take on the Arkham series of acclaimed Batman games. This, while being different, does still maintain some of its feel while also itching a scratch for nostalgia for the Batman comic books with a familiar feel of Saturday morning cartoons from the 90s. What I mean to say is, while it may seem plagued with micro crashes, micro stutters, jitters, and any other kind of glitch you can think of under the sun from time to time, it's gotten a lot of shit from other reviewers, this game still has been a blast for me to play. Now, for a comic book genre video game lover such as myself, it's still kept my attention. This game starts out in its own Bativerse, where Batman has just been killed and the team of ragtag sidekicks and reformed criminal all come together to mourn Batman whilst tracking down all the leads for unfinished cases Batman was investigating before his death. The crew work together to learn teamwork as they take down supervillains and have heartfelt interactions, while cheesy at times, and made the story moments worth watching. All in all, this game is very fun to play, especially with one of your friends. All right, now let's talk about the cons. While being limited on consoles to 30 FPS, which is in itself an issue, and I have watched multiple reviews, including Digital Foundry, showing that the games managed to fall short of 30 FPS in most parts of the city, with consistent issues running at 30 FPS throughout the entire game. Constant game crashes. I would say for every hour and a half or so you play, there will be at least one crash, even up to an hour, sometimes a memory dump being caused by the game to shut your entire PC down. The city feels empty and lifeless in almost every part of it except for one area at the top of the map. There are almost no cars and definitely no people anywhere to be found making the forced side quests, wandering around to interrogate or beat up enemies to find out where the real crimes are, which are like true crimes in a big red triangle. They feel even more forced and even more disconnected because of the fact that the city's so empty. The open world is not a place you can get lost in and do what you want the way Spider-Man could, unfortunately. The bat cycle spawns too far away and reminded me of Cyberpunk, the way the vehicle would just spawn 50 feet away from you and you'd have to sprint and run to it every time. There was no interaction with it. You just spawn it, run to it, get on it. It's super boring and nothing breaks when you crash into it like Arkham Knight, so there really was no interaction with the motorcycle at all. There are no physics, no effects, and the bike experience falls super flat for me. While riding it and steering it has been a pleasure compared to most motorcycle implementations in other video games, there's nothing fun about the bike. It feels slow and you actually can be stopped by anything, a wall, a street light, another car. The game actually felt like it was originally made to be a games as a service game when they first started development, and then maybe they changed their mind and changed direction after realizing how poorly it went for other superhero games. Avengers. But there is something weird about this game. There's something weird and disconnected about how the story interacts with the city, and maybe that is true. I can't say for sure, but I know the game was delayed, and this is just kind of what we ended up with. Picking up loot was terrible too. It's just a flash and a number of items you picked up. And then when you pick them all up or when you die or death of an enemy, there's just random things on the map. There's no large font. There's no way to read it and interact with it when you walk up to it. It's just terrible. Weirdly just not satisfying, but I do like that there is crafting gear, and that did make it pretty fun. It was a nice element. Even on medium, the default difficulty, there are many premeditated crimes that felt like they were designed for two-player co-op and almost impossible to do alone. When appropriately leveled, because you are being spammed by ranged attacks so much that you are either stuck in a perpetual stun lock or being hit by 15 enemies at the same time. It leaves parts of this game feeling easy with two people and super hard playing by yourself. Let's talk about the pros. All four characters play different and are unique in abilities, and it's very cool. Batcycle is fun, riding wheelies is so satisfying. The traversal and parkour, while not being quite as good as I remember in Arkham Knight, it has been one good thing going for it. The Batcycle, which is the only thing that is both predictable and solid to control, it's not as fancy as the Batmobile, like I said earlier in the last Arkham game, but it's the only reliable way to get around the massive city until you reach knighthood, where you can travel through the air, and even then, it's not super accurate. The way the dodge works and the characters move is just incredible, amazing. I can't say enough good things about the way the game moves and the way that they interact and flip and flop and fly. The animations are just so good. The slow motion finishers, super good. The skins are incredible. It's probably my favorite part about the game. The suits and the customization is just fantastic. They all look uniquely cool. Colorways and mixing and matching gloves and symbols and all the little details are just so good, so cool. They definitely nailed that. Let's talk about multiplayer and co-op. It has been truly a seamless experience. Dropping in and out has worked great. The game does feel like it's built almost exclusively to be a co-op experience, like I mentioned. Can play as the same character as each other, which is pretty cool. So you can be the same character in a game together. You do not have to choose a different character. The scaling is to that exact level of the host. So if you're at level 30 and you jump into somebody's game that's playing from scratch, you are their level, no problem, and you keep all of your abilities. No local co-op, which is a trend that's kind of bummed me out over the years, because I can't have somebody come over and physically play on the couch next to me, but is what it is. And then the shared progression is supposed to be able to be shared throughout. So the only thing that I noticed is that the little things you do in the outside world, a lot of those do not share, at least now in the first weeks of owning the game, but hopefully that'll be fixed. And then if you do any of the big major story things, when you go back to your game, it asks you, would you like to replay this or skip it? And the choice cannot be done. So you can skip it and you don't have to play it again in your own game. So that's cool. Let's get into the combat. The combat was fine for a button masher, not as solid as the original Batman series, but it is what it is. The heavy attack is just a long press of the exact same button as the light attack, which is kind of stupid. I found it dumb and annoying. It's very hard to be accurate and strike exactly how you want to. It would have been nice to have a light and heavy button separate from each other, the way we did in the previous Arkham games. The ranged combat, also light and heavy, same button, stupid. Ultimates are pretty rad though. Momentum meter, so you have a momentum meter, and the momentum is your juice, your mana, whatever you want to call it for your ultimate. And the ultimates were awesome. It's how you build up the power by just getting regular strikes or ranged strikes instead of a traditional cooldown. So it's very similar to AC Valhalla or one of the recent Assassin's Creeds. Animations are amazing. Already talked about that. The animations are fantastic. The camera felt like you literally couldn't control it in a lot of places. Like you get near a wall or in a small tight area and the camera would just turn in a completely different direction. It would have been really nice to have like a lock on target or something. It felt really hard to control the camera at times. And then the combat overall was just a mixed bag for me. Not bad, not good, not, I don't know, meh. It was meh combat, super inaccurate buttons, which made it very frustrating at times. When we would do the stealth, you would go to push a button or to slowly fall off of a cliff or whatever, and the button for your stealth attack is the same button as throwing a batarang or whatever your ranged weapon is. And so 9 out of 10 times I would go in stealth and I would end up throwing batarangs and pissing off every one of the enemies, alerting them all to my area, and then having to fight my way out of a paper bag. So kind of stupid, kind of hated it. Hope they fix it. Let's talk about performance on the Steam Deck. The performance on the Steam Deck was also a mixed bag for sure. I had a similar number of crashes and other things. The frame rate in all inside areas or dungeons, I was calling them, was almost a perfect 45, 50, 60 FPS, which is fantastic, and those indoor areas are awesome. But while I was in the open world or out in the city, you're forced to spend so much time out there, and it's a bummer because the frame rate dropped below 30 consistently, both on the PC and on the Steam Deck, depending on how you're playing, what your settings are. It would bounce between about 23 and 30. It felt incredibly smooth though. That was the weird thing. I literally couldn't tell that it wasn't 30 or higher, so your mileage may vary. But as far as I can report in my hours of playing, which is about 50% on the computer and about 50% on the Steam Deck, so probably about 15 hours on the Steam Deck. It was actually very smooth, super playable experience. Less crashes, I think, maybe than on the actual Steam Deck. So yeah, Steam Deck performance was actually better than I thought and better than the frame rate was being reported on my screen. The settings auto-detected were the best option for it too, for the Steam Deck. I tried about 15 different variations of the settings, including FSR2. They seemed to all give me the exact same FPS with an almost unnoticeable difference in fidelity. So I would say let it default to whatever it defaults to on your Steam Deck when you first load it, and don't change anything. The game is definitely soft looking due to the upscaling or just low res textures of being on low graphical settings. I had a few issues with cutscenes freezing the game if it went to sleep, or I paused it and it went to sleep. So if you're in a cutscene, don't sleep the computer, you'll have to watch the whole thing again or go back in and skip it. I couldn't find the servers when I woke up. The Steam Deck, I had multiple crashes, but not a ton of them. And, it was basically one per play session. I'd play about 2 hours at a time. All in all, Steam Deck played it just as well as the PC, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your experience. And my PC has an RTX 3080 and a 5 gigahertz overclocked 6-core processor, and I played it in 4K 60 the entire time at about 55, 60 frames per second, and had no issues. So I rate this a Steam Deck ready and totally playable game.
And last but finally not least, the verdict.
Story. It was predictable, but well thought out, and while not being amazing, is still really fun and kept my attention from beginning to end while I did some repetitive crime fighting in the city. The game was a sufficient length. The combat at times felt like I had no control over my character, or the camera was still varied enough with varied enemy types that it was solid enough to enjoy for me. I love the characters and the customization. I felt like much needed and long awaited Batman game had finally come out. The concept of all the sidekicks being playable characters was awesome, and I really enjoyed all the animations and movements. They were awesome, and I never stopped enjoying the satisfying slow motion finishers. The game is definitely worth buying. I recommend it on sale if you aren't a diehard Batman fan, probably for $30 or less. If this game comes out at 50% off and they do a couple of big bug fixes, it will be awesome. While Arkham Knight is still clearly the best in the long line of Batman games, this one is still totally fun to play, and the fact that you can seamlessly play through the whole thing with a friend totally makes it worth it. Gotham Knights was a good effort at a multiplayer Batman game. Not good enough, but a good one. A little too grindy at times, and the combat was a little hard to control, and the story and the character designs were good. All in all, I give this game a 6 out of 10.
Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it brought you help in your decision to buy or wait or not buy this game. If you like this video, click like. Comment below any questions you have about the game, or tell me what you think about the game, if you have it, if you don't have it, if you think about getting it. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Peace.